This is Alcohol Freedom Finders. In this episode, we meet Judi, who in her youth used weed, cocaine, amphetamines, uppers, downers, you name it, she took them all. But aged 23, when the fun stopped, she quit them all. Without much effort. All that is, except alcohol. She describes alcohol as her demon. Her story will knock your socks off. And if you're thinking demons require exorcism, priests, and God, you won't be disappointed. This is a story like no other. Let's get started. Welcome to Alcohol Freedom Finders with me, Barry Condon, and Justine Clark. Today, we are excited to have with us from Vermont in the United States, Judi Daigle. Judi is a T&M coach like Justine and myself, and is also an expert in the ALP side of things, the psychology method that perhaps Judi will tell us about later, that This Naked Mind is now using. And she is a specialist in the opioid world. So she uses her knowledge from This Naked Mind as a coach and is applying it to the opioid area. And we're just really excited to hear all about that and to hear a little bit more about Judi's own story. So welcome, Judi.
Welcome, Judi. It's absolutely awesome to have you here. I'm super excited to hear about your journey. We've known you for a while now, and I always love talking to you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and what led you to This Naked Mind and becoming alcohol-free?
Oh, hi, guys. Thanks for having me. This is really exciting. I think the work you're doing is just fabulous. So I'm here mostly, alcohol story. I've had it since 12 years old, stealing from grandpa, or not grandpa, but grandma, and drinking lots of alcohol, having lots of substance use all the way through high school, all the way into till I was about 23. I was polysubstance user all through high school. And ironically, the story that always kills everybody, it's like, yeah, but you were president of the class. You were president of the band. You played first chair trumpet, blah, blah, blah. But I was also right out in the football field with all the weed smokers. And so I was president of all the clubs, So I stopped hard drugs when I was 23. And I did all the drugs except opiates, ironically. They made me sick. Couldn't do them, thank God. And so then from 23 until the age of probably 49, I struggled drinking huge hard liquor, huge. But again, I went to school. I was a high GPA. So it was really hard for me to struggle to understand, like, oh, stop drinking. Or, because I could function. I was successful. I stopped drinking at the age of 49. But what's interesting about that is that I started my business. I've been in business myself since 2006, working with people with opiate dependence. So I helped the needle out of their arm and then help them transition into a functioning help, whatever is their goal in life. So what happened for me to become alcohol-free, I struggled. And I did everything possible, and nothing worked. So back in those days, that was what year? I don't know, 49. I was like 20. It was before Annie, anyway. Annie came out. It was before Annie came out. It was like 2009. Yeah. Now I'm dating myself. Awesome. So like 2009. And what happened to me was my parents had some friends who had a priest friend, and I went to their house, and the priest was listening, and he was doing what we call it in the Catholicism, we call it lifetime confession. So I went and did my confession and all this and that, but I never talked about drinking, because who talked about that? It's like, yeah, all right, I drank, but so what? So anyways, he was praying over me. And I was on my knees, and the woman from the house was kneeling beside me, and he was praying over me. And all of a sudden he leans into my ear and he says, Jesus just healed you of your alcoholism. And so I sat there on my knee, or I was on my knees, and I thought, right. My first thought was, how dare you call me alcoholic, right? That was how dare you call me alcoholic? But that was the truth. So like a good person with alcohol issues, I came home and promptly tried to drink. couldn't do it. The next day, tried to drink, because people who were living with me at the time, we all drank. That was what we did, right? We drank, we had dinner, we drank wine, we drank scotch, we did all those things. I haven't been able to drink since that situation. So,
Wow.
And I can't deny it. I can't deny it at all. You know, I've had a lot of miraculous things in my life, but that was like the big one.
That's amazing. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't think we'll ever hear a story quite as amazing as that.
And I'm jealous.
Yeah. So how was that then? So what was next? I mean, you hadn't done any of the work. You hadn't worked out how and why and what. You'd struggled, hadn't been able to do it, and then it just, as if you would sort of cured, or but at least you couldn't do it anymore. And so then what?
That was it. I mean, I'd go to family functions because that's what we do. I mean, the culture in my family was drink. Celebrate. Oh, look, there's a new scotch out. Oh, look, celebrate the alcohol in and of itself. And so we go to family functions, and I'd try to have a beer, and I'd get like a little bit in, and just that little feeling you start to feel as the alcohol is kicking in, it made me sick. Absolutely sick. So I said, this is God's way of saying to me, I know you're going to drink through this, Judi. So we're just going to make you sick so you won't. And that is really, so when I came into Naked Mind and I'm watching people talk about their struggle and all this and that, I'm like, I know the struggle. I completely know the struggle. I know the struggle with drugs. I know it with alcohol, but how to take the steps to stop, I was never successsful in that. So the only way I could absolutely stop was I was healed. I mean, it was that simple, or I'd be dead. It wouldn't be a matter of still drinking. I'd be dead. So that's my alcohol-free bit.
I mean, the fear, that is such an incredible story. Like I said, I am slightly jealous because I wish it had been like that for me, to just have a moment where everything turns. But first of all, I just wanted to circle back and say, I loved what you said about that you were the president of everything. Because I think a lot of the reason why people who suffer with substance and alcohol in particular can't move forward is because they tend to be overachievers. They tend to be people who are good at everything. So not only are they overachievers, they're overdrinkers. So I think that's a really salient point and really good, because people who are good at things are also very good at drinking. And
yes.
The shame and the guilt and the regret is even greater. So tell us more. What then led you to this Naked Mind itself?
So what led me to this Naked Mind, I have worked, like I've said, since, ironically, I started this business, I was still drinking. Okay. I would go into groups, and I'd be watching the clock. Like, okay, group's got to be done because I have to get to the package store before it closes so I can buy beer so I can go before home, right? It was crazy. Here I am trying to tell people how to not be addicted, and I had no control of my own alcohol. None. So after Jesus healed me, I started looking at Addiction 101, and I'm not saying there's not use in it, but I started looking at the methodologies of how people, you looking at the stages of readiness, looking at all the stages of addiction, looking at all the stages that, all the times people have been in and out of rehabs, all of those things, and it wasn't working. People are still, they would go, because right now in my practice, I have a doctor who prescribes Suboxone. And what happens is he does the medical piece. So people come off the street with the needles in their arms, and then they go onto Suboxone, which helps take out the withdrawal symptoms. So then that helps them to calm down, so they can then start functioning and starting on the journey that they want to go to for their goals, right, in their life. But I'm watching all this, and I'm like, now people are stuck on Suboxone. Now they've gone from a full agonist, which is like, heroin and methadone and Oxycontin and those kinds of things. And now they're on Suboxone, which is a semi-agonist, but now they're dependent on it. They're physiologically and psychologically dependent on it. So I'm like, all the methodologies I'm trying to use that I've learned in my studies, because I have a master's, they weren't working. They're not working. So in searching It was June. I mean, I found this Naked Mind. I took the June 2023 class, and I think I found Naked Mind 5 days before the class started. It just popped up on a feed somewhere. And by the grace of God, I said, all right, this is a new methodology. Let's try it. So now I'm working to do a study. I'm doing a beta study, if this in fact will work, to help people get off of Suboxone.
That's brilliant. And I think by the sounds of it, what you were looking for was, a different approach. And I think that's what this Naked Mind has. It doesn't just look at the behavior and try to stop you from doing one thing or another, like stop you drinking. I know that Annie says, endlessly, we don't look at the behavior. The behavior takes care of itself. If you can learn something that makes you think different thoughts and feel a different way and have just different beliefs particularly about the things that we run to in a drug or in alcohol, the things that attract us, the things that we perceive to be benefits, the things that we think are doing us a favor. She allows us to learn the science and see the psychology, see the neurochemistry, the way that the dopamine system keeps pulling us back, that actually it's, you keep going back for relief, and every time you get that relief, it's leaving behind the memories and the urges for the next hit or the next drink. When did you sort of start for yourself to sort of see I think because the way that we sort of look at it now is you think, well, alcohol seems to get a free pass, whereas people think of opiates and other sort of hard drugs as something to be concerned about and things that you can get addicted to very easily, but think of alcohol as something that only some people will become addicted to. And it sounds like for a while you even yourself gave yourself a free pass that I can run to the liquor store while I'm helping these poor people who have an addiction.
So it's really interesting, Barry, because my experience with addiction, I mean, I was a multi-polysubstance user, right? And I stopped all the other things, but alcohol was super hard and I couldn't do it, right? And so the people that in my office, many of them polysubstance, right? Many of them cocaine, alcohol, weed. So if you parallel alcohol and opiate, and you want to look at the parallel, they're just as destructive. The alcohol, I mean, what's interesting to me is, and even within my practice, the stigma, right? The stigma with opiates is huge, right? Even among people who use opiates. And alcohol, that's no stigma. It's legal, right? These are people in my office that tell me this, that alcohol is legal. So there's no stigma because you can go to the liquor store and you can do this and that. Yet when they go to AA, because some of my folks, their community providers will say, go to AA, this and that. But if they're on Suboxone, well, you're still using, right? Even though Suboxone is a med to help them not use, in their mind, there's a stigma there. When they go to the pharmacy, there's stigma there. But in their minds, alcohol doesn't have the stigma, but ask them to stop drinking, right? And so I have 3 people that are pretty heavy drinkers and it dangerously so, because you can't take Suboxone. It all works in the brainstem, right? It all just works in the brainstem, and I always tell them you won't suffer. You just won't wake up and everybody else will suffer, So I don't know that maybe I veered off your question. I just think that when we look at the world, a drug is a drug is a drug. And alcohol gives us dopamine hits like crazy, right? I used alcohol to escape feelings. I used alcohol to cope. I used alcohol for all those things. And then I used alcohol just to survive because I was so physically dependent on it. I couldn't.
When did you see that was the same as anybody else or any of the guys that are struggling with opiates?
My alcohol use, you mean? I actually thought alcohol was worse, honestly. I thought from my experience, because I could stop cocaine, I could stop all the amphetamines, I could stop all the downers and uppers and everything else that I was taking. I stopped all those without much of a to-do. Alcohol, I could not. So alcohol was my demon. Alcohol was more than anything. But because, it's legal, I can go to the liquor store, blah, blah. So what? I just fell out of the bar on the sidewalk. I'm laying there in the middle of Boston. So what? Ha ha, look at her. She's drunk. But if somebody, to me, how is that not as bad as when we walk down the street and somebody's all nodding out, right? It doesn't matter what we're nodding out from.
I think it comes back to that, we're good people. So we're doing something that we're allowed to do. So that gave us this kind of hall pass to carry on with it. And what Barry was saying earlier about it being something that relieved us, something that scratched an itch. So that's why we did it. And yet in the back of our minds, in our subconscious mind, the mind that this naked mind works on, is you just know deep down that it feels wrong. You know it's wrong, and you know it's making you feel terrible. And that's what this naked mind looks at, that part. And actually thinking about your moment where you had that connection with the priest who leaned into, he completely connected with you, completely heard you, spoke to your subconscious through Jesus, and you felt that relief yourself without the substance for the first time, perhaps. So your relief and your deep need was met, and you were completely seen. And I think what this naked mind allows, I don't know, I'm just thinking things through for myself, Judi. It's the first time I've thought about it this way, but I'd like you to speak to that. But what I'm sort of seeing here is that this naked mind allows others to see for themselves what you managed to experience in that special moment.
It's interesting because, yes, this naked mind says, all right, here's your feelings. Here you are. Just never mind all the rest of this, right? So Jesus took all the rest of that away from me. Boom. It was done. It was gone. And I had no choice in the matter. So then to look at the feelings and then to experience all of that. You're right. Naked mind does. And I'm doing that with some of my folks on Suboxone right now. For the first time in their lives, someone's asked them, well, how do you feel about where you are in your journey to not use anything? And naked mind has allowed me that. Just like when we talk to people about alcohol, well, how do you feel about your alcohol? We had talked earlier about, well, if you were going to say to somebody, like, what was one of your questions about, what would you say to somebody if they wanted to look at their relationship, to reframe their relationship with alcohol, right? I would probably say, well, why? What's going on?
Yeah.
Why? What do you think about it? What do you feel about alcohol? What do you feel about Suboxone? What do you feel about weed? What do you feel about any of that? Right? Because I think if someone had asked me that, no one did. But if someone had, I probably would have said, I am scared to death because this thing has a life of its own and it controls me. And no one gets that. People just say, oh, just stop drinking, or just say no. Oh, no, you're a piece of garbage because you can't control it. BS. So I had my own business. All of these successful entrepreneur things and all these leadership management things. It doesn't matter. It had a life of its own, and no one asked me, how do you feel about it? And that's the brilliance of naked mind. How do you feel about it? It's huge.
And I think that's the crux of the ALP, affective liminal psychology, that Annie has now sort of formalized the way that she approaches it. And you're right, it's about how we feel, because logically anybody who's overusing anything knows, this is not good for me. They know that they will be better off without it, and they'd like to be without it. They'd like to be able to cope with the day-to-day without needing to go there. But, as Annie sort of focuses on, there are two sides going on in our brain, and they both want the best for you. But the powerful subconscious that makes actually 95% of our choices for us thinks that running after the dopamine and doing the easy thing, it's a survival mechanism that goes after pleasure and safety and whatever makes us feel good. And in some situations, that's really good. But in this situation, it's not. And you need to get in there and kind of reason with that part of your brain if you're going to make any progress and actually feel free in the end, and not just someone who's able to resist temptation.
And I think, you said something, we go for the dopamine hit because it makes it easier. Does it? When I was looking at the pre this and really thinking about it, I thought, you know what? What is the big deal for me right now to be alcohol free? The big deal is clarity. The big deal is freedom. Even in my most hardest emotions, even when I'm struggling with people die or this and that. I mean, heavy, real emotions. When I think about that, is it really easier if I just could run out and get drunk? I don't think so. Because why? Number one, I'm not in my life. I'm running out and I've got something else taking over my life. Right? And number two, tomorrow I'm going to hate myself. So now I'm not only am I grieving, or whatever emotional stuff I'm going on. Tomorrow I'm going to be 6 times as bad. Because why? Because I've got all this other junk on top. So the dopamine hit is very temporary. And like Andy talks about, like 20 minutes, right? Have a drink, and then wait 20 minutes and see how it goes. I don't know. I was thinking about that. And I thought, really, in the whole freedom bit, alcohol free means like you don't have that monkey on your back all the time.
I absolutely love that. And I think you've really sort of summarized beautifully how this naked mind takes alcohol from sitting on your lap and puts it with science and psychology on the other side of the room. It gives you the space. That's what the freedom is.
Right.
The space between you and substance. And how are you finding the beta test going for you so far, Judi? I'm really interested to know how it's going with the opioids.
It's people. What's really interesting is, right, everybody, society, right? We all fall prey. Alcohol's everywhere. And then, you're on Suboxone. Never going to get off Suboxone. I'm here to tell you there's hope. I'm here to tell you, yes,
Great.
You can get off Suboxone. But people are so afraid. They're so afraid because why? Because they get on YouTube and they watch things and, you can't do this, you can't do that. People get so scared. And I think that's also true with alcohol. People like, I'm hanging on alcohol because alcohol's all I know. It's the same with cigarettes, right? When you stop cigarettes, when I stopped smoking, I cried for a week. I was like, where's my best friend? I mean, right? So it's the same. But the fear, they're so afraid. Or are you afraid you're going to use? I asked them. Are you afraid you're going to use again? No, I'm done with that. I'm not going to do the lifestyle. I'm not going to buy on the streets. I'm done with all that. Okay, well, what are you afraid of? I don't want to be sick. Oh, because you've never been sick before. Right? I mean, and what do you mean you're going to be sick? Well, everybody on YouTube or people. And so my focus right now, because this is brand new in my practice, my focus right now is to really help people understand that they are who they are and their experience is their experience, and to stop listening to everybody else.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I think it's important that people understand also that change is possible, that they can, it is the substance that they're taking that's making this so hard, and that they're not broken. They're not. And I think we've talked about before about labels and how important it is the language that we use. And traditionally people put a label on people and say, okay, you're an alcoholic, you're an addict, you're, someone who's in recovery forever, looking over their shoulder, and you better watch out. But I think what this naked mind and the way that we practice and the way that we believe is that actually you can get past it. But I don't consider myself, I smoked for 20 years and stopped 10 years ago, but I don't consider myself a cigarette addict still. I don't consider myself, a cigaretteaholic that has to be careful of cigarettes. I don't want anything to do with them anymore. I'm past that, and I'm really, really glad about it. And the same with alcohol. Is that something that you could speak to?
Oh my goodness, that's like, ooh, Barry, now you hit a soft one. It all ends with ick. Ick. You are not ick. A, you are not ick, and B, ick is a label, and you are a person. You're a mom, you're a dad, you're a brother, you're a sister, you're a friend, and you have gray hair, you have white hair, you have blue hair. I don't care what you have, who you are. you have a dependence on whatever this substance is. You have a psychological dependence, you have a physiological dependence, but that doesn't make you, that's not your identification. You are not ick. I'm going to make a shirt. Lost ick.
I love that, because that's what they say in this sort of modern dating programs, that they stop dating someone because they give them the ick. So that's just hilarious. So don't give me the ick. I love that. Instead of being given the ick, what 3 words would you use, Judi, to summarize what it is to be an alcohol freedom finder?
Wow. That's so big, so big. My own thing is miraculous. My own story is miraculous. And everybody, just the fact that you're standing and listening to this or whatever you're doing, you are miracle, period. Right? You are miracle. There's nothing above and beyond that. You are miracle, just your being here. So of course there's hope. There's always hope. We all get lost. We all get tied into the ick of the world, but in general, you're a miracle. The next part, my second word, is surrender. And why surrender? Because there's something bigger than us. And if I call him God, and that's my frame. Other people frame different. But in that creation, the bigger than us takes care of us. This is my belief. And that I wouldn't even be here, honest to God. I could tell you horror stories about when I was in the darkness. But now that I'm here, and my job is to help people understand that. My job is to help people that their creator loves them immensely. Right? I mean, you're created, you're a miracle. And so why wouldn't a creator love the miracle? Why? It just makes sense. Right? And then my third one is gratitude. Just because I'm just incredibly grateful that every day I wake up and thank God that, oh, no more substance. Thank you, Jesus. Now, my whole big thing is if he'd help me with sugar, that's my, it's like I put in my request, a little bit of sugar, please. If we could just deal with that. But those are my words, is miraculous surrender and gratitude. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity because you guys are just the best.
Judi, that's brilliant. Yeah, that's just a really lovely way to sum your story up and your journey up. If people want to get in touch with you and follow you, is there a way that people can and should get in touch with you?
Sure. I do have a website, manyroadscoaching.com. So I'm not on Instagram yet. I'm not on any of that. I'm a work in progress in that regard. And all my contact info is on that webpage. So it's manyroadscoaching.com.
We'll put that in the show notes.
Judi, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. You're always just a pleasure to be with. You're so full of light, and you're also incredibly funny. And we're so grateful to have you with us. So thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you both. It's been lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Judi.